This video is sponsored by TigerStream, and your promo code is in the description. While many people may shrug it off as trivial or pointless because the event happened so long ago, it absolutely cannot be overstated just how important this video is. The catalyst for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and the lost freedoms at home, freedoms that have still not been reclaimed, is directly related to this event. The reason you can't simply walk to the airplane taking you to your destination these days without taking your shoes and belt off and putting your laptop in a separate bin, the reason we continue to be groped and radiated by TSA agents is because of what happened on 9/11. And let it sink in that taxpayers spend more than $8 billion every single year on the TSA, while according to the government's own red team tests, we find that over 95% of guns and bombs that they try to get past TSA personnel actually make it onto your plane. You feel safer yet? That's some expensive security theater. An ineffective, inefficient, and costly theater brought to you by the events of 9/11. Your Fourth Amendment rights are violated every time you go through an ineffective TSA checkpoint. And not a lot of Americans want to think about it, but some people made and continue to make a boatload of cash as a direct result of the events of 9/11. If the maxim "follow the money" was ever appropriate, this event is the perfect application. But let's focus on just one aspect of that day. It's an aspect most people don't even know exists. So here are a couple questions for you. What if you happen to be inside a 47-story steel-frame skyscraper a little over 200 feet away from the North Tower on 9/11 with another building, World Trade 6, in between your building and Tower 1? What if while you were trying to make your way down from the 23rd floor of your building, which housed the city's command center, to the lobby, you made it down to the 6th floor and an explosion from below forced you to retreat to the 8th floor? What if when you got to the 8th floor, it was dark because of the smoke and hot because of the fires? What if all this happened before the collapse of the South Tower at 9:59 and before the collapse of the North Tower, the tower that's closest to you on the south side of your building, at 10:28? Your building is on fire. It's filled with smoke and explosions are going off. Explosions inside your building. Oh, and your building wasn't and won't be hit by a plane that day. When you break out an 8th floor window with your fire extinguisher, you're able to see clearly to the street. The first thing that catches your eye are police cars and buses on fire. Remember, this is before either tower fell. Why the heck would they be on fire? What I just described to you is the eyewitness testimony of a guy named Barry Jennings, the Deputy Director of the Emergency Services Department of the New York City Housing Authority, and Michael Hess, New York City's Corporation Counsel. They were the two men who were trapped in and had to be rescued from World Trade 7. This is Hess as he calls for help from the 8th floor of Building 7. In their original testimonies, both said that explosions were coming from inside their own building before either of the Twin Towers fell and afterwards. Just so you can have a clear picture of where everything was, here are a couple diagrams of World Trade 7 and where it stood in relation to the North and South Towers. You can see that Building 7 stood at the northeast side of Tower 1, the North Tower. Tower 1 was the first tower to be struck at 8:46 a.m. Now, World Trade 7 stood on the north side of Vesey Street, a little over 200 feet away from the North Tower, with Building 6 standing in between them. Building 7 was also over 400 feet away from the South Tower, also known as World Trade 2. Keep in mind that standing between World Trade 7 and the South Tower, which was the second tower to be struck 17 minutes after the North Tower at 9:03, were World Trade Center Buildings 5 and 6, which would have shielded Building 7 from the scattering debris which was being blown from the South Tower as it fell at 9:59. This video shows the blown out windows of Building 7 around 10:15 a.m., approximately 16 minutes after the South Tower collapsed. Remember, the South Tower was well over a football field away, over 400 feet from Building 7. And yet, windows by the lower lobby are blown out. As the cameraman makes his way up the non-functioning escalators to the main lobby, you can see the general destruction. This right here was Building 7's main lobby before 9/11. It's what the lobby looked like when Jennings and Hess made their way up to the 23rd floor command center earlier that morning, after Tower 1 had already been hit. Later though, while being rescued by firefighters, here's what Jennings had to say about the condition of Building 7's lobby.
When they finally got to us, and they took us down to what they called the lobby, because I asked them, I said, when we got down there, I said, where are we? He said, this was the lobby. And I said, you got to be kidding me. It was total ruins. Total ruins. Now keep in mind, when I came in there, the lobby had nice escalators. It was a huge lobby. And for me to see what I saw, it was unbelievable. And the firefighter that took us down kept saying, do not look down. And I kept saying why. He said, do not look down. And we were stepping over people. And you know you can feel when you're stepping over people.
Why was the lobby of a building hundreds of feet away from the falling towers rendered unrecognizable? Why the heck would they be stepping over people in the lobby as the firefighters were rescuing them? In order for them to be able to leave the building, Jennings says this.
They took us out through a hole that I don't know who made this hole in this wall. That's how they got us out. They took us out through a hole, through the wall, to safety.
Now, it's important for everyone to realize that, according to the testimony of these two men, before and after the collapse of the towers, they reported hearing explosions within Building 7. Later, though, Hess mysteriously changed his story during a BBC interview, saying there were no explosions in the building. And on August 19, 2008, Barry Jennings was found dead. No cause of death was given, no autopsy or death certificate has ever been released, and no witnesses to his death have come forward. His family disappeared at the same time. 2 days after his death, the release of the NIST final report on the collapse of World Trade 7 claimed that there were no witnesses to explosions within Building 7. Jennings was only 53. It's important to keep in mind that Building 7 was sandwiched between the Verizon building on the west side and the U.S. Post Office on the east side. Neither of these buildings sustained the damage inflicted on Building 7. And take a look at the massive destruction sustained by World Trade 6, which was situated right below and to the north of Tower 1. Yet in spite of all this damage and the direct hits it took by the massive falling beams and all the explosions heard going off in the falling tower as it plummeted to the earth, Building 6 still didn't collapse. So Building 6 didn't collapse, Building 5 didn't collapse, the Verizon building didn't collapse, the post office didn't collapse, but Building 7 did? It's worth noting that Building 7 housed the Emergency Command Center for the City of New York, as well as the offices of numerous government agencies, including the Department of Defense, the CIA, the Secret Service, the IRS, and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Jennings and Hess testified to NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, in 2004. But this testimony was never released. Further, as comprehensive as the 9/11 Commission report claimed to be, it omitted not only the testimonies of Jennings and Hess, but left out the collapse of Building 7 altogether. Next to the trade towers, it was one of the biggest buildings in downtown Manhattan, and it doesn't even get an honorable mention in the very report that is said to be the comprehensive analysis on the events that occurred on 9/11. In this day of mass deception, media fakery, and government willingness to remove liberties from individuals, never stop questioning the mainstream narrative. Leave your thoughts for the world to see in the comments below. What do you think brought Building 7 down? This video was made possible by all these incredible people who believe in what we're doing here on this channel and support the content through Patreon. If you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe and notification button. If you want to support the channel, hit me up on Patreon, get a hard-hitting conversation-starting shirt, or visit one of my sponsors. The links are in the description. And I'll see you guys in the next video.